This presentation is for educational purposes only, and the opinions expressed are those of the presenter. All trades presented are not traded in a live account and should be considered hypothetical. Hello everybody and welcome to Hawkeye FX with your host Marcus Toons on the 18th of September 2017, and this is my weekly review. Now if you remember last week on the 11th of September we were looking for continued pound strength and continued Canadian strength here, but as we reach the overbought territory we have to be careful these prices turn down as the Canadian did here. Now you'll see here that the pound didn't turn and continued to strength throughout the week. And if we look here on the 4-hour charts, the blue box represents the whole of last week, and you can see the pound makes significant gains against all of the other currencies throughout the week. Here against the pound yen making over 800 pips. The Canadian dollar on the other hand continued to strengthen against the yen here as the yen weakened, but you can see here it strengthened and turned through last week, weakening against the US dollar here, started to turn against the euro, the Aussie, the New Zealand here, and weakening significantly against the pound, which was our strongest currency last week. Now in last week's review I'd also discussed this yen coming for overbought territory here, down, turning up, and was expecting it to turn again down, which it did, and it significantly weakened here throughout last week. You can see here on the 4-hour charts in the blue boxes for last week that the yen weakened against all of its 6 currency pairs and was our weakest currency of the week. Now conversely, I also discussed that the New Zealand dollar here was turning from oversold territory, coming up on turning back up on a shoulder pattern. So instead of expecting this to turn back down, we expect it to continue to strengthen through the week, which it did. Here on the 4-hour charts for the New Zealand, you can see the New Zealand strengthened against the yen and started to turn against the Canadian here. It made gains against the Aussie and the euro, although this is very choppy trading, but was relatively flat against the dollar. And then finally, I was looking for the US dollar here to turn up a week ago Friday, and we can see that it did. And we can see here on the 4-hour charts that the US dollar made significant gains against the yen, but then more moderate gains against the New Zealand, the Aussie, and the euro. So what do we have for this week coming? The first currency to discuss is the pound here. You can see this is very high. This will turn down and weaken, which I discussed in some of my blogs at the back end of last week. Now, the interesting thing to note about the pound was last week, our inflation figure hit 2.9%, and this has spurred the Bank of England into action to try and reduce inflation. Now, the biggest way they can do this is to get the exchange rate back up after Brexit, and this will make our imports less expensive, and this will bring down inflation. So what are they doing? They're talking up the pound currency. So you'll know from last week that Mark Carney and his fellow MPC members are starting to talk up a rate hike, and this is the opposite of jawboning a currency. Now looking at the news releases this week, we may still make a further high in the pounds. Bank Governor Carney will speak today, 4 p.m, and he may well speak up the pound again. We then may see the pound weaken this week, with retail sales expected lower than last month on Wednesday. And then the big one here is on Friday. The UK Prime Minister May is speaking about the Brexit deal, and this will be highly anticipated in the market. Now I'll also be looking for continued New Zealand strength here as we run into the New Zealand general election, which is to be held on the weekend coming. And I'll also be looking for continuing US dollar strength here. The big news item of the week is the FOMC interest rate decision on Wednesday, when the rates are expected to be kept on hold. Watch out for any rhetoric to determine whether the final interest rate decision will come from the Fed in December, and in which case we will continue to see this US dollar make some gains back. Now against these currencies, I'll continue to look for Canadian weakness as we've turned down from the overbought territory here. And the news item to watch here is this core CPI reading on Friday. Also look for continued Australian weakness and Euro weakness, although this may start to turn up, and also yen's weakness, but do watch out for this turning up. Now, the big news out of the yen is the monetary policy statement here on Thursday, but I will be looking out for any rhetoric to continue to try and jawbone and weaken the yen. Okay, as usual, I hope this helps. Monday and Tuesday may be very quiet on the market, with the volatility picking up later into the week as we get the major news items.